Welcome to the Startup Help Desk. We're your source for answers to questions about starting companies, building businesses, and the meaning of life. We answer questions submitted by founders just like you who have problems from starting, hiring, building products, and an expert panel of people who are former founders, investors, company builders to answer those questions for you, to give you a bunch of perspectives for every question so you can decide where the answer might lie. All of these questions, again, are submitted by people just like you. If you have a question, please find us, thestartuphelpdesk.com or thestartuphd on X/Twitter. We would love to answer your questions on a future episode. As to our panel, my name is Sean Burns. I was a founder for 20 years of companies like Flurry and Outlier. 2 years ago, I started a new kind of venture firm called Near Horizon, which is what I do today. And I am joined on the panel, as always, by Nick and Ash.
Hey everybody, my name's Ash Rust. I'm an idea stage investor based in San Francisco. I mostly invest in companies based in the US and Europe through my fund Sterling Road. I've also worked at places like Trinity Ventures and Bullpen Capital as an advisor. Before investing, I was an entrepreneur myself, most notably an early employee at the social media analytics company Clout, as well as the co-founder and CEO of SendHub. These days, I spend most of my time coaching founders and I've helped more than 1,500 startups over the years.
Hey, this is Nick Melionis. I am co-founder and CEO of a company called Navi. Our tools and services help people and organizations start and succeed on their innovation quests. I've supported hundreds of innovators and startups, and I'm hyped to hop into today's episode.
And the most exciting part about today's episode is that this is the last podcast that is not generated by AI. You might not know this. All other podcasts are AI generated. We are still artisanal humans creating artisanal podcasts.
Real humans, real jokes, real good times.
We're hanging strong. Yep.
Yeah, maybe like Chili's should pay us for some marketing copy.
All of our questions today were submitted, again, by founders just like you, and they're all about strategic financing. Strategic financing are kinds of financing that are not from venture investors. There's lots of different meanings. Ash, as the senior VC among us, can you give us some context about what is strategic what is strategic financing and how does it fit into the larger venture ecosystem?
Yeah, so this is when a company invests in your company rather than a venture capital fund. And it's a little bit different in a number of ways. First of all, they're kind of investing from their balance sheet and they have very different incentives. Oftentimes they want access to the technology or a partnership or maybe to buy you in the future versus just hoping for a big return. I would also add that they are in general, not going to be the A players of the investor market. Nobody on the Stanford MBA program is like, oh my gosh, I want to be a strategic investor when I grow up. No, that's not what people say. So that becomes a little bit of a problem when the rubber meets the road because there tends to be some different incentives, right? Like if you become the Google of your industry, well, then you're going to become a big threat to the company that gave you that financing. We're starting to see it play out now with OpenAI and Microsoft, where OpenAI really needed Microsoft in those early days because they didn't have the money to fund all the computation that they needed to build those models. They gave away a really great deal to Microsoft, profit sharing, and now Microsoft is turning the screws and wants to keep that going. But of course, OpenAI realizes they can't give away double-digit percentages of their profits. So here we are. It's pretty much always going to be a drama if you go down this route. But the reasons why people do it is those strategic investors can offer something. In the case of Microsoft, with that example, they could offer access to computation at a scale that wasn't otherwise available to OpenAI. So they maybe had to do it.
So it is a double-edged sword. I have raised strategic financing for my companies. It is a double-edged sword. It can be great. It can hurt you. There are lots of things. We'll dig into that today. Let's jump into the first question. So one of our biggest competitors wants to invest in our company and the capital would help us grow faster. Is it okay to accept investment from a competitor? Nick, what do you think, man?
I love this. I would say probably not. It's absolutely fantastic that you've generated interest from your competition here. And of course, this is one flavor of strategic financing, an opportunity for your competitor to invest. I think that it is very key to be strategic about considering this strategic financing. And so if a competitor wanted to invest in me, I would default to immediately saying, oh my gosh, that's absolutely fabulous. Very likely no, but we want to be principled with how we investigate it. Across your teammates, when you're considering this, really you want to measure how critical is this capital? And is it likely that we could get it elsewhere versus the risks that come with actually having competition on your cap table that may open the door for them to get data that gives them advantages over you. And so it's a pretty meaningful risk. So I would say the default is no. And importantly, if your competition wants to invest in you, you should actually take that as the signal that the market may be interested too. And so start seeking opportunities elsewhere. That's my quick take on that one.
Yeah, this is a definite no. Their motivations cannot be pure. Like, who calls their competitor like with a straight face, like, "Hey, Amazon, CEO of Walmart here. You mind if you want to take 50K?" Like, just be serious. They are not loyal to you. They obviously have other incentives. Just ask yourself, if you become big, will their involvement in your company hurt you? It does not take many steps to see that that will be the case. So I would see something like this as espionage, plain and simple. No. And if I didn't say it earlier, no.
We can't figure out what Ash thinks on this issue. It's not perfectly clear. I'm curious. There's also an element of not just people who are direct competitors, but somebody who might be a competitor in the future. I think you have to think a few moves ahead, because it is sometimes the case that a larger company with a bigger balance sheet may want to invest in you to learn about the market, kind of explore it with an eye towards doing it themselves in the future. And you can end up in a very awkward situation where they invest in you. They have an eye on the market.
That's 100% what they want to do. Obviously, They want to take a look. I mean, what other motivation would they have? It's not because they're looking to make 10x on the money.
Mm-hmm.
It is true. It is true. But like I said, even though they don't compete with you today, they might compete with you tomorrow. So just be really careful about your definition of competitors. If you're like, oh, they compete with us today, oh my God, I wouldn't even take the phone call. I wouldn't even respond to the email.
Yeah, maybe answer the phone and say like, hey, I think you have the wrong number. Does your phone do this?
There's so many stories of some of the biggest M&A players out there that would feign interest in M&A just to get access to the private information of companies.
Right. That is absolutely the risk too, because I think in general, my natural tendency is to be opening myself up for some serendipity. So I do have this natural inclination to say, oh, I want to take the call because I want to know what's going on here.
You want to see if it's a side quest.
Yeah, exactly. And side quest will kill you.
Well, we very rarely get easy questions with such clear answers. Let's see if the next one is as clear. Nick, what else we got?
All right, let's do this. A founder asked us the following. This founder said, a few of our customers found out we are fundraising from investor calls and they want to invest. I don't really want customers investing, but I worry about souring the relationship. How do I handle this? Ash?
Well, first of all, I don't love the concern. If your customers want to invest, that's a pretty good sign. I don't know if you need to be too worried about that. If this is because your customers are idiots, then we've got different problems, and I understand. But by and large, you're not going to give them governance rights or anything like that. So, should you really be concerned about that? Probably not. If you want some tactics on how to put off somebody that wants to invest in your round and make it not happen or make it unattractive, I would say always you can first delay. So just say, oh yeah, we don't really have the round fully detailed yet. I'll let you know in a few weeks when the things are further along. And then when they're further along, you can talk about how the round is already oversubscribed and there's difficulty finding room for anybody. But again, I would probably say that it makes sense to take a small check from a customer, and you can use things like roll-up vehicles, like what AngelList provides. They're a really good tool for putting people in sort of a separate bucket, 1 or 2 steps removed from the company's direct cap table. And then you can also make the terms less attractive. So, after a round is closed, if someone still wants to invest desperately, a common tactic these days is to say, well, look, you can invest on an uncapped safe with a small discount on the next round. That is obviously not the greatest of terms. Everyone else just paid price X. You're now paying 10% less than the price in 2 years' time or something like that. But if you're desperate to get in, so be it. So I'm not as concerned about this as the founder that submitted the question. But if you really don't want to do it, you can use delay. I would suggest you do it, and then you can use the ring fencing tactics or the higher prices to disincentivize.
But in danger of agreeing with Ash, I want to emphasize often strategic investors will do uncapped notes, if not for the only reason that a lot of strategic investors have non-financial reasons for investing. And so if they have strategic reasons for investing or whatever it is, they might be okay with the uncapped note because they don't have a specific return target. They have other reasons to put money to work. So you can actually make that happen. I have done that in the past. In the effort to continue to disagree with Ash, which is, of course, both my hobby and one of my core competencies, I will say I think that
it's a skill set.
It is a skill set. Taking money from customers is dangerous. I will illuminate a few reasons why. First is if you don't use the methods that Ash mentioned, which are a good idea, and somehow they end up in information rights or they're on your investor updates, that can be really bad. Not because they'll take your information and compete with you, but simply they may look at it and say, hey, your average contract value is $100,000. Why am I paying $200,000? I want a discount. And you lose pricing power, for example. There are all sorts of other reasons that information rights may complicate your relationships with a customer. Even if you don't have information rights, if you have a customer and they invest in you and then they churn for any reason, and all of a sudden you have a customer who invested in you who doesn't use your product anymore, it's really bad. It looks very bad for future financing because this is a customer who, in theory, liked you so much that they invested in you. They have every reason to stay and they still churned out. And it's almost impossible, in my experience, to keep that a secret. And it will come up and it will complicate your next financing. Like, why did company X invest in you and like you, but then churn? It's weird. So I generally advise against it. It ends up being more risk than it's worth usually. However, there can be good reasons, one of which is if you have a chance to, for example, if there's a few very big strategic customers in your market. I did this once in the financial services market. There are some providers in financial services among the larger banks that if they invest in you, it's kind of like a validation that you are one of the best service providers and everyone else will buy from you. And that's true of a few different markets. And so that can be a way to lock up a market by taking a strategic investment from these sorts of kingmaker customers where that signals to the market, hey, you should buy from us. In those cases, it can be a good idea. And if in some way you manage, there are other cases where, for example, if you raise from a bank in the US, banks are not typically allowed to own large amounts of voting shares in private companies. And so they may actually buy from you non-voting shares, and you may actually get capital on favorable terms because the regulations prohibit those customers from making your life difficult. So it can work. It's just, I would be really careful. And if you have other sources of investment, they almost universally come with less baggage and maybe better off. Use your discretion and see how it all shakes out.
Sean, have you seen many investors who were customers churn? I've not heard of that before.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen it. And in fact, it happened to me. It was very unfortunate. Usually it doesn't happen for the reasons that you think. It doesn't happen because, for example, usually it doesn't happen because this customer doesn't like you or there's a better product in the market. Sometimes these are big companies. Their strategic focus might change. Or I saw this once. There was a company that I worked with. This was not my company. I was an investor in the company. And their largest customer was Salesforce. And Salesforce wanted to invest, and Salesforce invest in their company. And they sold to the customer success group at Salesforce. And then a few years ago, I don't know if you guys read, Salesforce laid off their entire customer success organization. The entire thing went. And with it went this customer contract because they didn't need it anymore because they didn't have those people working at Salesforce, but Salesforce had still invested and it became an albatross.
Wow. So, that's a great story.
That I can definitely understand the conflict and risk there.
Yeah. That was unfortunate.
Well, it was 52 episodes, but that's some great insight, Sean.
Come back for episode 104 for the next great insight coming from Sean. Oh man. Okay. Let's make sure we answer 3 questions. Ash, what do we got?
Yes, exactly. We've got to do something today with our time. All right. We have the opportunity to apply for some government grants, but I was told that taking grants will make raising from investors harder. Is that true, Sean?
I would say no. I think that Many grants can be a form of dilution-free capital, and investors love dilution-free capital. And founders, everybody loves dilution-free capital. You get more capital and you keep more equity. I mean, who wouldn't love that?
You get less dilution.
Yeah, it's not a negative, but I will warn you that there are a lot of grants that require you to do specific work. And if that specific work is not part of your normal roadmap or normal course of business, it really is a distraction. And in those cases, you might want to avoid it. Here's a great example. There are a lot of grants you can get from the US government you used to be able to, maybe not anymore. But generally speaking, you used to be able to. Some of them were military grants, some of them were government grants, but a lot of them had a specific purpose. And I have had companies that have taken these grants, but the work is often so specific that it's only relevant to, for example, support that government customer or support the needs of this specific state. And it's not generalizable. And while it is great to have the money, if now you have a distraction, that distraction may cost you velocity and be expensive in other ways. So if you can find a grant that does not involve that kind of distraction, it's great. So just ask yourself the question, does this grant move us forward on the path that we were already going to go on? Or does it give us a new path? And are we okay with that new path? Because we can't take two paths at once. That's my experience. Nick, you work with this kind of the government more than I do. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is spot on. Ultimately, investors do view startups that have received grants favorably, and that makes sense. For instance, I've got a handful of startups that I've recently made intros to for prospective investors. They've secured some fantastic support via grants. It's clear that those grants signal to these prospective investors something about the startup, namely that they are progressing meaningfully towards some milestone. So in short, grants can be a fabulous way to demonstrate some demand signal and some interest in terms of what the company's doing.
Is there a risk with these that you tell yourself that it's on the path because you want the money?
100%. That is absolutely it. Because finding new pathways to money feels awesome. There's just a human nature piece to it. And I think for startups as well, you need the fuel. And so there's a huge risk to form fit yourself into thinking that grant describes exactly what we do and the customer that we want to serve. Let's go for it. And so it makes sense to be exceptionally discerning about confirming if that is actually the case, or as Sean mentioned, if this is now becoming a side quest, you better make sure that it's a validated side quest that corresponds to the plan.
I can hear the music from The Legend of Zelda pop up every time he says side quest. And so if you're working in your startup company, that music comes up randomly in the background, you should beware and be very careful.
Nick is around. Yeah, he follows him. He's got a Switch too. He's just playing it.
Exactly. I just keep that music playing nonstop when I'm working. That way, it always reminds me to stay focused on one quest and nothing beyond that.
Nobody in the history of startup has ever used the word quest as much as Nick Melionis.
I hope it pays off. I really do. But so far, we'll see.
You're going to get some great gold coins at the end of it.
Yep, exactly.
One final meta question about strategic investing for both of you. I feel we're midway through 2025. It feels like more and more people are talking about strategic financing these days. Is it your guys' impression that it's because it's harder to raise venture financing now than it was? Or are there some other reasons at play? Or am I just imagining it and it's the same level as it's always been?
No, it's the bubbly AI funding market. Because everybody wants a little piece of AI and the stock market isn't doing terribly. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world. That's causing new participants in the market or non-standard participants in the market, such as strategics, to want to spend more money on funding early stage AI companies. So yeah, you're right. It's definitely happening more and more. And obviously because their incentives and valuation expectations and capital expectations are different, it can distort the market a little bit as well.
I will, one more personal anecdote from me, by the way, which is if you do take a strategic investment from a company, they typically will have either their corporate development group does venture investing, or they may even have a venture investing arm. Because a lot of the people who work in those jobs, they don't get the same economics as partners at venture firms. They tend to leave a lot more frequently. And so just be careful that the person who you talk to about the investment, the person you have the relationship with, may not stick around as long as a partner at a venture firm might stick around. And if you're going to have a relationship with this strategic investor for a lot of years, you may have a rotating cast of characters that are your representative to them. And so just be wary of that. Although, actually, Nick and Ash, I should point out, there seems to be a weird GP shuffle in the VC world these days where people jump between firms. So maybe that's not any more common than in VC. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, compensation drives decisions and so does outcomes. So there's been a lot of change over the last 12 to 18 months as the fallout of that valuation insensitivity that was going on in 21 to 23 and during COVID. That has now played out. And so a lot of people did not make the cut.
Ouch.
I got nothing to turn the tone on that one. Yeah.
No more quests for Nick.
Yeah, exactly. Stop that quest in its tracks right there.
And if you have questions, and by the way, hint, hint, nod, nod, ask us some questions about the VC market and the inside baseball of it. I bet that would be fascinating.
Perfect.
If you have questions for a future episode, we would love to answer it. Find us at thestartuphelpdesk.com or thestartuphd on Twitter/X. We would love to answer your questions. Submit them early and often. We love to have episodes. The more questions we have, the more episodes we have, and that's what we like to do. But for now, that's all we got. Ash and Nick, thank you, as always, for laughing at my jokes.
Hey, thank you both.
Oh, we do our best.
We will be back, but for now, the Startup Help Desk is closed. Good luck in building your business.